So the JBL Boombox 4 is a very impressive speaker that gets super loud and it has a lot of bass for its size. However, the JBL Boombox 4 can be a little pricey. So today we're going to compare the JBL Boombox 4 with its little brother, the JBL Xtreme 4, and we're also going to throw in the Sony ULT 5. Let's see if it's worth it for you to upgrade to the JBL Boombox 4 or if the smaller speakers will get the job done just right for you. Regarding pricing, the JBL Boombox 4 has a retail price of $550, which is a lot, and it's an increase from the Boombox 3, and it's the same price as the JBL Partybox 320, so just let that sink in. Whereas the JBL Xtreme 4 has a retail price of $380, and the Sony ULT 5 has a retail price of $330. Nonetheless, if you want to pick any of these speakers up, they'll be linked down below, or you can always press on the YouTube shopping button. And if you want to further support the channel, then you can always watch some of the related videos in the description down below. So when it comes to design, all of these speakers are super durable because they all have a fabric wrap body, so they're going to have no problem standing up to constant abuse from bumps and scrapes, and they're all waterproof, making them all great options to use while at the beach, lake, or pool. Now, all of these speakers are super portable. However, the JBL Boombox 4 is significantly larger and heavier than these other two speakers. But the biggest thing about the Boombox 4 is that this speaker doesn't come included with a shoulder strap like either the JBL Boombox 4 or the Sony ULT 5, which I do feel is a shame because I think an included shoulder strap on the Boombox 4 would have been a great update, but unfortunately you're still stuck having to look for a third-party option. But one thing that I do have to point out about the Xtreme 4 is that its USB-C port is exposed, whereas the ports on both the Boombox 4 and Sony ULT 5 are covered. So if the Xtreme 4 gets wet, you do have to wait for it to dry off before you can actually charge it, or else you're just gonna get a red notification blinking light here on the front. Now, I know that this is a very niche situation, but I do want to point it out because this actually happened to me with my Charge 6, and I freaked out a little bit because I thought I broke it, but no, it's just that the speaker is telling you that it's still wet and it needs to dry off before you can actually charge it back up. But one update the Boombox 4 did get is that it now has a built-in light feature, but I think this light feature is pointless for two reasons. For starters, this light feature only flashes orange or white depending on your bass boost mode. But also, since this light feature is tucked away in the passive radiator, it's hard to see. Whereas with the Sony ULT 5, this speaker also has a built-in light feature, and this light feature is actually worth using because you can actually see it from the front, and it does have a good flooding effect. So personally, I just use the JBL Boombox 4 with the light feature turned off, and it's just not worth using, and I really don't know why JBL even included a light feature on the Boombox 4. Now, when it comes to battery life, the Boombox 4 has an advertised battery life of 34 hours, which is a lot, but that's with its stamina mode turned on, which is going to severely reduce your bass. But with stamina mode turned off, which is how you should be using the speaker on a regular basis, it's going to have an advertised battery life of 28 hours, which is still a lot and real-world use, with this speaker playing at 75% volume, which is already super loud, and with the bass boost set to deep, it's good for around 10 hours of playback time. Whereas the Xtreme 4 has an advertised battery life of 24 hours, whereas the ULT 5 has an advertised battery life of 25 hours. However, this advertised battery life of 25 hours is with the Sony playing with this light feature turned off, which I do feel is fair. But real-world use with both of these speakers playing at 80% volume, and that's with the ULT 5 playing with this light feature turned off, and while in ULT 2, the Sony is good for around 12 hours of playback time, and the Xtreme 4 is good for around 14 hours of playback time. Not bad for either of these two speakers, but 75% volume on the Boombox 4 is already louder than max volume on these other two smaller speakers. But the biggest battery upgrade on both the Boombox 4 and Xtreme 4 over its predecessors and over the Sony ULT 5 is that you can actually remove the battery if you want. Now, removing the battery on the Boombox 4 or Xtreme 4 isn't as easy as removing the battery in any of JBL's party boxes, because you do have to get an Allen key to undo some screws, and then you do have a very thick rubber grommet that you have to remove as well. And JBL did it this way so that both of the Boombox 4 and Xtreme 4 can still have their IP68 ratings, but the important thing is if you want to swap out the battery, you can. Now, the JBL Boombox 4 is using a JBL 600 battery, which is the same battery found in either the JBL PartyBox 520 or the PartyBox 720. So if you want, you can actually mix and match batteries between these three speakers, whereas with the Xtreme 4, it's using a JBL 400 battery, which is the same battery found in the PartyBox 320. So if you want, you can mix and match batteries between these two speakers, and this is something that you just can't do with the Sony ULT 5, and for comparison sake, here is the Boombox 4's battery, and then here's the Xtreme 4's battery. And to charge these speakers, the Boombox 4 charges it via a double barrel AC port, and there's no external power brick that you have to worry about, which is good. Whereas with these other two speakers, they charge via a USB-C port, which is more convenient. And with all of these speakers, if you were to use them while they're plugged in, you do get a performance boost out of them. They are going to get louder, and you are going to have more bass. Now, with either the Boombox 4 or the Xtreme 4, the battery does need to be installed for these speakers to power on, even if you're going to use them while they're plugged in, because even if they're plugged in and you take out the battery, they're only going to turn on for like a split second and then turn back off. But also, with the Xtreme 4, you actually get a complete charging cable. You get the wall adapter and then the USB-C port on the other end, whereas with the Sony ULT 5, you just get a USB-C to USB-C cable, and you are going to have to use your own wall adapter. But regardless, with both the Xtreme 4 and the Sony ULT 5, you can always just use your phone's charger to charge it up, but it is nice that you get a complete charging cable with the Xtreme 4. Now, when it comes to ports, the ports on both of JBL speakers are a little sad. All of these speakers have a USB-C port, which you can use to charge your own devices, which I feel is super useful, but you can also use the USB-C port on the Boombox 4 as a wired connection. But the Sony ULT 5 is the only speaker here that actually still has an audio jack, so you can use it as a wired connection that way. And when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, all of these speakers can be connected to two devices at the same time, so you and a friend can both be DJ. Latency is not an issue for any of these speakers, so you can use them to watch videos with on your phone. And when it comes to audio codecs, all of these speakers have support for SPC and AAC, but the Sony also has support for LDAC, which is Sony's own in-house high-res audio codec. But if you do want to use LDAC, you do have to be an Android user because iPhones top out at AAC, but still, the Sony sounds great even if you're using it with AAC. And none of these speakers have a Wi-Fi support, which personally I really don't care, but maybe JBL will announce a version of the Boombox 4 and maybe even the Xtreme 4 with Wi-Fi, which I will promptly ignore because, like I said before, I do feel that a Wi-Fi version of the Boombox 4 is just pointless. But wait, if you're actually going to charge all of this stuff, then check out our partners over at Anker. They've got a ton of battery banks and chargers, and personally, I've been using this new 7-in-1 charging station from Anker. Now, personally, I really like this charging base because it has two built-in USB-C cables which retract, and you can use them to either charge small devices like your earbuds, or you can even use them to charge your larger devices like your iPad or MacBook. There's an additional USB-C port, so you can plug in an additional cable, and there's also a USB-A port if you've got any older devices that are using a USB-A cable. Plus, on the back, you've got an additional three-prong AC ports, so you can plug in any of your other devices, and this base also has a built-in screen, so you can see how much power it's putting out. You can also see how much power each device is taking, and you can even get temp readouts just to be safe. Honestly, this charging base does save me a lot of clutter here in the studio, because I have a lot of devices that just constantly need to be charged. So if you want to pick this charging base up, it'll be linked down below, or you can always press on the YouTube shopping button. And I'm also going to keep a coupon code in the pinned comment down below so that I can get you an extra discount. But with all that out of the way, let's talk about sound. Regarding speaker setup, the Xtreme 4 has dual front firing woofers, dual front firing tweeters, and dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides. Whereas the ULT 5 has a single front firing woofer, dual front firing tweeters, and dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides. And then there's the JBL Boombox 4, which also has dual front firing woofers, dual front firing tweeters, and dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides, just like the Xtreme 4, except it's just bigger. speaker. But what is new here is that the speaker now has a passive radiator that shoots out the back for added bass. Another new feature on the Boombox 4 is that it now has a bass boost button like JBL's party boxes, and there's two settings, deep and punchy. Personally, I prefer deep because it gives you more kick to your bass, whereas with punchy, I feel that it just adds too much resonance, which does mess with the rest of your music. And then there's the Sony ULT 5, which has its Alt mode. Alt 1 is going to increase your bass, and this is the setting that you want to use while indoors, and Alt 2 is going to increase both the sound pressure and the bass of your speaker, so you're going to get the most out of it, and this is the setting that you might want to use while outdoors. But now we're just going to go ahead and jump into the sound test. The JBL Boombox 4 is playing at 75% volume with its bass boost set to deep, whereas both the Xtreme 4 and the Sony ULT 5 are going to be playing at their max volumes.
I was standing, staying still, never said what I feel, and every time I took the blame, carried all this quiet shame, cause all the pressure in my chest, I've gotta fight to catch my breath, when every step still feels the same, trying not to break. Where do I go from here? Maybe I'll disappear. If I don't try, I'll never know. I'm waiting on you. Where do I go from here? There will be no more tears. Kill the doubt, feed the fire, hear the voice inside. Giving up, it's my turn this time. They took a shot, now I want mine. You fall, I rise, I take the wheel. So this is how it feels. Where do I go from here? Maybe I'll disappear. If I don't try, I'll never know. I'm waiting on you. Where do I go from here? There will be no more tears. Kill the doubt, feed the fire, hear the voice inside.
So when it comes to sound, I feel that the JBL Boombox 4 is a violent sounding speaker. It gets very loud and it has a lot of bass for its size thanks to its new rear firing passive radiator. So you're going to get a lot of kick out of your bass. But the reason why the Boombox 4 is able to get so loud is because it puts an emphasis on the highs. But in doing that, the Boombox 4 can sound a little nasally because you're not getting as good detail in the mids. And for the most part, the JBL Xtreme 4 is kind of the same. It also gets super loud for its size, but that's because it puts a strong emphasis on the highs. Whereas with the Sony ULT 5, I feel that this speaker sounds more balanced and open because it doesn't put as much of an emphasis on the highs. So it has better detail in those mids, but obviously when it comes to max volume performance, the JBL Boombox 4 gets much louder than these other two speakers, and for the most part I feel that the Boombox 4 is going to be good for like a 15 to 20% party, because not only does it get loud, it also has the bass to match. Whereas with these other two speakers, I think they're going to be good for like a 10-person get together. So overall, just as you'd expect, the JBL Boombox 4 gets much louder speaker and has much more kick in its bass than these other two smaller speakers. But when it comes to sound quality, it just gets louder. If you want better sound quality, better balance, and more openness, then you might want to go with a box speaker. But finally, let's talk about pairing these speakers up with other speakers. Now, with all of these speakers, if you have two of the exact same speakers, then you can wisely pair them up and get them to play in left and right stereo mode. But they have to be two of the exact same speakers. Now, with the Sony ULT 5, it is using wireless party chain, so you can pair it up to other Sony speakers that are also using wireless party chain, like let's say an ULT 7 or to an ULT 3, or you can also pair it up to any of Sony's older speakers, like let's say the XG500 or XE300, or you can also pair it up to any of Sony's larger box speakers, like either the Tower 10 or the Tower 9. The only thing is, you cannot pair your Sony ULT 5 up to a Sony ULT 1 because the ULT 1 does not use a wireless party chain. But then there's the JBL Boombox 4 and the Xtreme 4, which are both using Auracast, so you can pair them up with other Auracast speakers, like let's say the JBL Charge 6 or Flip 7, Clip 5, Go 4, or to the Grip, and you can get them to all play in sync. But also you can pair up your JBL Boombox 4 or Xtreme 4 to any of JBL's party boxes that are also using Auracast, like let's say the JBL Party Box Encore 2, Party Box 1, 23, 25, 27, 20, or to the Ultimate, and you can get them to all play in sync as well. But unfortunately, since the JBL Boombox 4 is using Auracast, you can't pair it up to any of JBL's older speakers that are using Party Boost, like either the JBL Boombox 3, Boombox 2, Xtreme 3, Charge 5, Pulse 5, Pulse 4, Flip 6, or to the Flip 5. The JBL Xtreme 4 is the only JBL Auracast speaker that can connect to both Auracast speakers and Party Boost speakers. And also, even though the JBL Boombox 4 and the Xtreme 4 are using Auracast, you can't pair them up to JBL's Party Light sticks and get them to play in sync like you can with any of JBL's newer party boxes. But nonetheless, if you are planning on growing your collection of speakers, the Boombox 4 gives you a lot of options, but just keep in mind, if you're upgrading from a Boombox 3 or any other Party Boost speaker, you can't pair them up to your Boombox 4. Only the Xtreme 4 is compatible with both Auracast speakers and Party Boost speakers. But with all that being said, with the JBL Boombox 4, you are getting more volume and more bass out of the speaker than you would with either the JBL Xtreme 4 or the Sony ULT 5. That's pretty obvious. But I wouldn't necessarily say that you're going to get better sound quality. But one downgrade that you do get with the Boombox 4 over the Xtreme 4 is that the Boombox 4 isn't backwards compatible with Party Boost speakers like the Xtreme 4. But if the Boombox 4 is a little too big or too expensive for you, personally I do prefer the Sony ULT 5 over the JBL Xtreme 4 because I feel it sounds more balanced, plus it also has that built-in light feature that is worth using, unlike the light feature found on the JBL Boombox 4. Honestly, I think they should have taken out this light feature and just included a shoulder strap instead. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something if I'm really proud of it.